Good morning, everybody. Welcome to First Take. Mollywood's got a few days off, so a little bit of rest and relaxation for Molly means there's a new sheriff in town, and his name is Will Kane. Stephen A.
Stop
Max?
right there. Stop right there.
No.
First of all, listen up, rookie. Listen up, rookie. All right? It is your job to moderate the show. You understand? Watch your manners. Be respectful. And make sure that you move the show along and speak when spoken to.
Let me explain to you something. Max, I'm sure you know this. I've got a stack of scripts here in front of me. That means I'm in charge. So I'll start off today asking you this. Where is your ties, sir? There's ties on First Take. That's how this show works. So where is your ties, sir?
I totally don't blame you for asking that question. Here is the answer. I have seniority over all of y'all. So those rules don't apply to me. See the difference?
No.
See the difference?
No.
I'm not a rookie. I'm a veteran. You're the rookie. You make sure you have a tie on.
We'll see. As I said,
if this were around the horn, you'd get docked points right now.
What do you think it is, Max?
I've never been on that show and never will be.
Let's get straight to the stuff here, because there's going to be some stuff you're losing points on shortly. The Raptors, of course, we know just about have the #1 seed locked up in the East, but the Cavs, they put everybody on notice last night with their big comeback victory over Toronto. Now, Max, you said you liked the Raptors to beat the Cavs in 6 games. Did last night change your mind at all?
Yep. No, it didn't. Did it change it at all? Is it possible LeBron goes bananas and it's 7 games? It's possible, but no. I'm picking Toronto to beat the Cavs in 6 if the series were to start today. Look, the bottom line about last night was, and I brought this up, by the way, about a week ago in other circumstances, and it had to do with Houston actually losing to Toronto. There's such a thing as a schedule loss. Jalen Rose brought it up on Countdown before the Houston-Toronto game. If you're playing the second of back-to-back on the road, 3rd game in 4 nights, you're simply likely to lose. And look what happened in the game. By halftime, it was like, all right, this Toronto bench is too much for, everyone, especially for the Cavs. And that will be the case throughout most of the series if they were to play. There will be no second of back-to-backs. There will be no 3 games in 4 nights. Certainly no second of back-to-backs on the road for Toronto. And so eventually, by the end of the game, their starters were tired. This is what happens in the NBA, especially among playoff teams. The surest bet, gamblers know this, the surest bet in sports is second of back-to-back in the NBA on the road, bet against that team, particularly in 3 out of 4. There were plenty of other things you saw in that game. DeMar DeRozan can't shoot it from the outside. He's at least taking more of them and hitting them at a slightly better clip than he normally does, and that's really good for the Toronto offense, but he's not a shooter. We know that. They have a tendency still to isolate DeRozan and Lowry late in games and have it be about hero ball in close games. I've mentioned that consistently over the last several weeks. My one fear for Toronto. It showed up a little bit last night. There's no one like LeBron James. We know all that, and yet, even second of back-to-back on the road, it's a 1-possession game when LeBron has an historically great game with 1 million assists and 0 turnovers. A 1-possession loss. I'm taking Toronto to beat the Cavs in 6.
Listen, nothing's changed from my opinion, because coming into the game, I was of the mindset that the Cleveland Cavaliers would not lose simply because they have LeBron James and Toronto does not in the Eastern Conference playoff picture. And nothing last night happened that disproves anything that I said. LeBron James was absolutely sensational, but he tends to be that way against the Toronto Raptors. That's something that we can't miss. We also can't miss the fact that from an active body perspective, Kyle Korver was out because of the loss of his brother. We have, our prayers go out to his family. Tristan Thompson was out. Rodney Hood was out. Larry Nance Jr. was out. So these are capable, able bodies that are ready to spell for other individuals, not to mention the fact play a little defense and rebound as well. That might have had something to do with the fact that Toronto had scored 79 points in the first half. But Toronto, regardless of how stout they are defensively, certainly that was not the case last night. What happened last night is that when it really, really counted most, they gave up better than 60% shooting to the Cleveland Cavaliers. LeBron James did what he wanted when he needed to do it. As a result, Toronto got exposed. We look at the Toronto Raptors. They're a very, very good basketball team. They're exceptionally well coached. They're exceptionally well led. We understand that DeRozan and Lowry are stars in this league who deserve our respect, but there are levels to this. And LeBron just reminded them that he's on a different level. And come playoff time, I suspect he will remind them again because he always does. They can't figure out LeBron. And that is their problem. It always has been their problem. It is their problem now, and it will continue to be their problem when the playoffs arrive.
You're ignoring the details. In the bigger picture, sure, you're right. That's been the case in this era. LeBron's unstoppable. He's qualitatively different than everyone else in the league. But he needs a certain amount, as you would say, Stephen A., the requisite help. And in recent years, even when the team around him hasn't been quite what you'd want, compared especially to the Western Conference powerhouses, especially since the Warriors got KD last year's finals, even when that's been the case, you can look around and say, that's another MVP caliber player or something more than just a normal all-star, right? Kyrie Irving, Dwayne Wade, at least heading into that first year in Miami. That's another all-star. Kevin Love, Chris Bosh. No, it's not that situation anymore. His second best player is Kevin Love by far. There is no third best player. Maybe Rodney Hood could be that guy, but we have to see it.
But Max,
playing last night, as you said.
with all due respect, and not to try to curry favor with the guy that has seniority on this show, I have been a Toronto advocate like you as well. I see something different from the Raptors this year than we've seen in the past during this regular season. But here's a simple question. Last night's game, who looked like they were performing at their peak more? Who reminded you of the way they've always played, at least when it counts? The answer is the Raptors. They look peaked out. As Stephen A., you just pointed out, the Cavs, as great as LeBron is, we count on that. The Cavs still have more room to go. They have Rodney Hood out. They have Tristan Thompson out. They have Larry Nance out. The Raptors, the place they're not hitting their peak was DeRozan disappearing in that game. And unfortunately, that's what we've come to expect in the playoffs from the Raptors.
Yes, and therefore, it's not just disappearing, it's that it's not enough to get it done in any way. ISOing in those situations generally isn't a great idea in the first place. And finally, what you saw last night, we can kind of lazily lump into this narrative of Toronto can't get over LeBron, or as you say, when it matters most, can you be hitting on, as you imply, can you be hitting on all cylinders when it matters most? The issue was tired legs because they were playing the second of back-to-back on the road.
I just love how you're so quick to call somebody lazy, like lazy thinking just because they don't agree with you. It ain't lazy. We believe you're wrong. There's a difference. And the fact is we have history to lean on our side to prove it. You can talk and and bloviate all you want about the Toronto Raptors. They've looked good in seasons past. They've been one of the top 2 seeds in seasons past. They've had home court advantage in seasons past. It didn't matter. Why? Because when they went up against a superior player, they didn't seem collectively as a team to have an answer for that. And because they didn't have an answer for that, what we can surmise is that, do they have an answer now?
Yeah.
When I'm looking at this team, I don't see a team that has an answer now. I see a team that's improved. I see a team that's capable of beating everybody else. I see a team that runs into the star that is LeBron James, and unlike other teams, they don't seem to have an answer for this man when it counts. And that's what I'm banking on.
Max, and tired is an odd thing. If there's one team in the NBA who's ready to go on a back-to-back, isn't it Toronto? Isn't it the team that goes, 12 deep? Isn't this the team that should have the freshest legs? If I'm diagnosing what happened last night, I think the focus has to be on why is your MVP, and DeRozan can play, right? I mean, what is he? Is he top 5 in MVP voting right now? He should be if he's not. Why is he not rising to the occasion he doesn't have to meet LeBron, but at least get somewhere close?
Hey, Will, I got a better question for Max.
I got a better question for me, Max. He's going to...
Go ahead.
Yeah. Go ahead, ask yourself a question.
You talk about fatigue, back-to-back, etc. How come 79 points in the first half wasn't enough to pull away? They weren't tired in that first half. They weren't tired enough to shoot worse than 50. They shot better than 50% for the game.
What Will just brought up was the bench. The bench blows out the league. It was the starters who fatigued late. They're playing the third game in 4 nights. Now, is it the case in NBA history that among similarly talented or matched teams, the team with the best players seems to win almost all the time? Yes, that is the case. I do not believe these are similarly talented teams. That's what I'm telling you. When you look at the Cavs since the All-Star break, set aside this game where, based on, this was a schedule loss. The Raptors had a loss on the schedule already when this game was scheduled. Take that away. Who have the Cavs beaten that you could say, that's a good team? They don't beat them. Now, recently they have been playing better. That is somewhat coincided with Kevin Love's return. Of course they're going to be better with Kevin Love. The issue is how much better. And it's not actually about LeBron. We know what LeBron can do. The question is, can Kevin Love be the second best player on an Eastern Conference championship team? We will see. I doubt it based on the rest of the cast.
Well, I got news for you. I'm not ignoring the fact that Kevin Love can play. I'm not ignoring the fact that Jeff Green can play. I'm going to give J.R. Smith credit for hitting 4 of his 6 shots last night, showing up and reminding everybody he actually is supposed to be a starting guard in the NBA. And if you have guys alongside LeBron James who manage to hit shots, and that possibility improves with the presence of Kevin Love alone, then no matter how formidable or how tough the road through the East may be, the bottom line is Cleveland is somebody you're still going to have to get through because they have the best player in the world with a supporting cast that's being supportive.
Let's talk about that best player in the world. I've been tasked with moving along. Let's move along. You guys discussed the MVP race yesterday, but you didn't bring up the best player in the world. You didn't bring up LeBron's name as part of that discussion. So, after last night, Stephen A., does LeBron's name need to be in consideration for MVP?
LeBron's name was always in consideration. It's just that it wasn't the top. It wasn't at the top of the list. He's not winning the MVP award this year. And it's not because of his individual greatness is lacking or anything like that, because we've seen how great he's been, Will, as an individual. But the point is, the Cleveland Cavaliers have gone through a roller coaster ride, and there is some culpability that falls on his shoulders. When you couple that, or juxtapose that rather, to the season that James Harden has had in Houston, how Herculean he has been, what a model of consistency he and the Houston Rockets have been. That usually gets thrown into the equation when you're taking league MVP honors into consideration as well. And that's what I think you have to pay attention to in this particular scenario. Every single situation that you can point to that has had something to do with the roller coaster ride that the Cleveland Cavaliers have been on this year has something to do with LeBron James. Not necessarily from a fault perspective, but he's involved. Kyrie Irving being gone, Isaiah Thomas ultimately being traded, the distraction that they tried to portray Isaiah Thomas as being when Isaiah Thomas was in Cleveland, etc., etc. You take all of those things into consideration. You remember when Kevin Love skipped out and he was gone for a little while, and Isaiah Thomas made us think about that, followed by Dwayne Wade when he was there, making us think about that. All of this stuff, when they talked about the relationship between Dwayne Wade and LeBron James, and how it was so much elevated above the relationship that he had with everybody else that it affected the team in a negative way. The point is, all of that gets attached to the leader. So as an individual player, in terms of his on-court greatness, there is no doubting, no questioning the surreal play of LeBron James and how it compares to anybody. But you have to take all of those other things into consideration. You don't get to ignore it. That did not happen in Houston, along with the model of consistency that James Harden has been. As far as I'm concerned, James Harden is head and shoulders above anybody for league MVP honors this year, including LeBron.
Max?
No, in fact, LeBron James is more deserving of the MVP this year than James Harden, maybe even than Anthony Davis.
That's
and
ridiculous.
I am guilty, as you are, Stephen A., as we all are, of being bored of just saying LeBron James is the MVP. So we play with the definition of MVP. Value and best is not the same thing, as I have to say this every time. Insofar as synonyms exist, in other words, one word can mean what another word means exactly, value and best is the same thing. They are synonyms. Everyone get it through your heads. MVP means best player. It's the same thing. It's completely synonymous. Now, LeBron James is better than James Harden. This year, he's better than James Harden. If you swap them on each other's teams, you put LeBron James on the Rockets. Rockets just got better. Cavs just got worse. Cavs are worse with Harden than LeBron. Rockets are better with LeBron than Harden. Even the statistics, see those counting numbers? The counting numbers are close. And James Harden plays in a Mike D'Antoni system. Put LeBron James in that system. Please. What you're doing, Stephen A., is you are taking LeBron James, the GM, because he's kind of the GM. You're taking LeBron James, the coach, because he's kind of the coach, and LeBron James, the player, lumping that all together. Well, the reason he's in this predicament is because Kyrie's not there. Whose fault is that? You're right, LeBron James. That's LeBron James, GM coach doing that. But you can't attribute that to LeBron James, the player, if you just leave everything else alone and look at the way they play. Take last night, for example. LeBron James is clearly and by far the best point guard in basketball. Matter of fact, it's really between LeBron and Magic Johnson, greatest point guard of all time, because they're point forward or whatever you want to call it. He runs the offense. He's the primary ball handler. He had 17 assists with no turnovers. His passing, everyone's talking about it, is the best it's been in his career, right there with the greatest of all time. Who's the greatest passer of all time? This year's LeBron James is in the conversation with Magic or anybody. So we get bored. We get just like Michael Jordan. Charles Barkley has one of his MVPs. Karl Malone has one of his MVPs. All right, so KD, here's Steph. James Harden, you come in second twice. You deserve it. Here, James Harden. Of course, LeBron James deserves to be in the mix, and in fact, probably on top.
Whoa, on top. Okay, well, hold on. First of all, Stephen A., Max makes a great point. Aren't you docking LeBron for his essentially GMing duties, for his coaching duties? All that off-the-court stuff you're talking about, isn't that LeBron you're taking away from him? Not what he's doing on the floor, but what he's doing off the floor.
No, I don't view it that way. My point is this. You asked for a bench. You asked for changes to be made. These are things that have transpired. You were the one that had something to do with change actually needing to be made. Then once change was made and your wishes were capitulated to, you granted that. There's been some struggles along the way, but ultimately in the end, I have every confidence that they're going to get it done. I'm not taking anything away from him. I'm just not elevating him to the point where we need to give him credit for all of those things at the expense of James Harden. It's not like we're looking at LeBron James saying you're at fault or you're wrong or you're not that great or anything like that. No, what we're saying is while we were debating LeBron James in this roller coaster ride all season long, there has been no debate about the greatness of James Harden and what he has brought to the table in Houston, Texas. This dude has been a model of brilliance.
I want to come back to you.
Credit for that.
I want to come back to you, Max, but I just want to say this.
Hold on, MVP from what year, Stephen A.? Because we're talking about this year,
season.
17-18, this season. Okay, then you can't go back and say your demands were capitulated to in the offseason.
No,
we're talking about
they just made a trade. What are you talking about?
This year.
You know what you're talking about. Didn't they just make a trade a couple of months ago? They just made it. We ain't talking about last year.
And are they better off or worse off after the trade?
It just happened.
Right, and what does that have to do with LeBron James'
Jr.
play?
and Jordan Clarkson weren't on the Cavs. Rodney Hood wasn't on the Cavs. George Hill wasn't on the Cavs. That just happened.
Was that? Yeah, but that's not what you're referring to. I would assume you're referring to the Kyrie Irving trade because you also, well, in that case, you said the trade was good for the team.
I'm acknowledging that the trade was good for the team. I'm simply pointing out that everything that they've gone through this year, LeBron has had something to do with that. Houston, James Harden just went out on the court and balled consistently throughout the season where Houston didn't need to do a damn thing because James Harden and his continued and consistent greatness
Max,
was enough.
As usual.
Max, I think you make a great point. I think you make a great point about Stephen A. docking LeBron James for these duties that go beyond what essentially are player duties. It's a great point. But if I'm breaking ties here, and to some extent I am, I have to say, I think Stephen A's right in the end because this MVP award has to be somewhat of a reflection as well as how far you push your team along. And James Harden, and so the first time in 2 years, James Harden, as the leader of the Houston Rockets, has made us feel like the Golden State Warriors are vulnerable. We haven't felt that in 2 years with LeBron James. And you're right, you can point to numbers, and he's great. But the Rockets this year with James Harden at the helm, that's the definition of MVP.
You're turning it into a team award,
No.
which is what people do. This is what lazy sports writers do.
That's the second
because
time
they
you
need
called
to
me
justify
lazy.
a vote in the MVP race. Here's the
Everybody's lazy to max because everybody's lazy to max because we're watching games and looking at people play and all of this other stuff, and Max is busy reading and giving out dissertations. So everybody's lazy to max.
Zip it. This is what lazy sports writers do to justify their votes. They turn the MVP award, which is an individual award, into a team award. You know what the team award is? It's your record. It's the championship. It's the playoffs. That is the team award. The individual award is how great are you? James Harden didn't make anyone believe he had a prayer against the Warriors until he got Chris Paul. And even then, all of that is within the context of a Mike D'Antoni system presided over by one of the best GMs in sports, Daryl Morey, as opposed to LeBron James, who's playing for one of the worst organizations in sports.
How can teams win without individual greatness? How can teams win without individual greatness?
That's why the Cavs have 42 wins in spite of a lackluster roster.
Well, Houston's got 57.
Because they have Chris Paul to go with James Harden in a cohesive offensive philosophy
so
offered
James
by
Harden
Mike
is just sitting there loving Chris Paul, and he ain't sitting up there doing his thing?
James Harden's a baller. James Harden's a beast. He's just not LeBron
That's what we're talking about.
There are levels to this. You just said it.
Look, we got to move on.
This year is on it.
We got to move on. I don't think I can speak for myself. We're not doing the best player on the best team thing here. What we're saying is it's got to show up in your team at some point. It's got to show up in your record and how seriously we take you as a team.
42 wins.
All right. Coming up.